This is our training for survey processing and OpenRoads. Um, we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to go through it, and it's going to be the data collector stuff's going to be based on what you need to do with Survey Pro, because that's what our crew has still. And then we'll get into the OpenRoad stuff, and that'll be the same even once we get Trimble software. One thing I wanted to mention, just because I had an issue with it, was some stuff that we did, or that Ryan and I did on Madison River. If you go out to pick up points after someone has started the survey processing, make a new file in the data collector, and because if you don't, there's no way for me to get just those points out and have the chains and feature codes stay preserved. If you need help with that on a job that you're working on, let me know, because it's pretty critical to get the coordinate system and geoid correct when you create those files. So that's just a heads up. I don't think that'll be a problem once we get Trimble, but the way we're working right now in Survey Pro is kind of not officially supported, and there's some issues. So we'll have to keep doing that with pickup surveys for now. So we'll jump right into it. The first thing you need to do when you start survey processing is create the project directories. This was more critical when we used GeoPack, but it seems like MDT still wants us to store our files in the folders the same way that we did with GeoPack, and this tool will create the folders for you. So you just go to the start menu and type in create, or start typing create, and it'll come up, create project directories app. And it's just this little guy. And all you do is type in the UPN for the project. We're going to be working on East River Road, which is 9812. But we're just going to use one of our pickup surveys to do this, and it's not going to be something I'm actually using for the project. So rather than put in the 000, I'm going to put in 999, just so it's not incorporated into the data that I'm actually using for the project. And we'll create a project directory. That's all you got to do. You can click exit. And now if you go into C drive, MDT data, projects, and there's that 9812.999, and it set up all our folders in here for where we're supposed to store files when we're working on survey processing. Everything goes in this GPK folder when we're working, and I'll go through which specific folders to put stuff in as we get there. The next thing that we'd have to do is download the control file from DMS, and I'm not going to go through that in this training. If you've never used DMS before, one of us in the office can show it to you. The file you need to download is the .ift file, and I'll show you. I already have it downloaded in my DGN folder. So 9812 sucon 001.ift, and there should be just one IFT file for each project in DMS. So this file opens in Notepad, so we'll go ahead and open it up. What we need to do is, when we need to bring these control points into our drawing when we open it here. And this file format here won't work in OpenRoads, but all we need to do is make a CSV, and that's pretty easy. So what we need to do is, we don't need any of this header or footer data, we just want the points. So we're going to highlight them, and then just hit copy. And then we're going to open Excel to create our CSV file. going to make my mobiler go away since it wants to flow on top of everything. And all we have to do is click into box 1 or cell 1A and then just paste. And all of our data is here, but we need it to be split up into separate cells. We want it to be point number, northern, easting elevation. And there's a nice tool to do that in Excel called text to columns. It's under the data tab. So we'll just click on that and make sure when you do this, all of your control points are highlighted, which they are right now. And our original file is space delimited. There's spaces in between all of our data sets. So we're going to change this from fixed width to delimited for our way of defining the columns, and hit next. And we have to check space on since it's a space delimited file, and you'll see it just figured out where the edges of the cells are right there. And make sure that this treat consecutive delimiters as 1 is also checked on. It should automatically come on when you choose space delimited. The reason being is in this file, you got like 4 or 5 spaces in between each piece of data. And if you don't have that checked on, it'll create a blank column for each of these spaces, and that's not what you want. So we're good to go here. We'll hit next, and everything's looking good. General data format is fine, and hit finish. And you can see it split our data out into columns. Now we're ready to save this as a CSV. So we just go to File, and then Save As, and click the Browse button. And we're going to save this in our project folder. So we're going to go to the C drive, and we'll go to MDT data, and then we'll go to projects, and then we'll go to our 9812.999 GPK. And anything we get from, or actually no, this one goes in the control folder because it's the control file. And I usually just, you have to go as save as type, you have to choose CSV. Just choose this one that says comma delimited. Don't choose one of these Macintosh or MS-DOS ones. And then I usually just save it as the UPN and then control. It's not really important to use the naming conventions for this because we're not actually uploading it to DMS. And then save it. And you'll get this possible data loss banner, and you can just ignore that and then close out of Excel. So now your control points are ready. Now we need to pull the actual survey data off the data collector. And I got this handy little My Mobiler app so I can show you the data collector screen. So we need to open our file. And this 9812 pick 1, this is our pickup survey from that job that I want to work in. So we're going to pick that one and hit open. And now that file is open. And all we need to do is go into export. And there's a number of different file types you can choose to export to. This Survey Pro 4.x job/raw file is the one that we want. That's the only one of these that will actually go into OpenRoads from Survey Pro. So we pick that and we hit export. And I'm going to make sure that you're exporting to the right folder so you don't lose your file after you export it. It'll default to whatever job you're working in last. So if you've worked in another job recently, you'll probably have to change folders here. But the last thing I did was practice for this training, so it's already on 9812. And I usually name it the same thing as my survey file in Survey Pro, so I don't get confused. So 9812 pick 1 will be the name. And it's going to ask me if I want to overwrite it because I've already created these files, and I'll just go ahead and do that. And that's it as far as we need to do on the data collector. Now we plug the data collector into the computer, which I've already done, and we can go in and copy those files to our project folder. Oh. If you can't find the data collector in your Windows Explorer, this Windows Mobile Device Center should have popped up when you plugged it in, and you can just go to browse the contents of your device. And it should have popped, there it is. Open a window, there we go. And all the survey files are stored in the Survey Pro Jobs folder. And we'll go to this job, which is 9812. And the files we need to copy are just this 9812 pick one job and 9812 pick one raw. So I'll highlight both of those and copy. And we'll go ahead and put those in our GPK folder. And these ones, anything that comes from the data collector goes in this download folder in your project folder. So we'll go ahead and paste those in there. And now we have all the data we're going to need to do our survey processing. So next we'll go ahead and open up OpenRoads. And we always have to open it using the construction survey startup tool, or it won't work properly. Same deal as opening up that create project directories, just go to start and start typing in construction and it'll pop up. And this box pops up. Legacy is for Geopack. The only time you're going to use that anymore is if you're working on a really old job doing a pickup survey. From everything else, we're going to be working in enhanced workspace, which will be the case here. For this, it's asking you to choose the nearest CAD standard share, which it's going to download. Every time you open OpenRoads, it updates the files associated with it. If you're working in the office here, you're going to want to choose Bozeman. If you're connected to the VPN, you actually want to choose Helena because we're actually connected to the network at headquarters, not in Bozeman. So I'm going to choose Helena and then hit Start Geopack here. And it takes a little while to get going. Alright, we're finally open here. The first thing we're going to do is save as this file, because right now we're working in the default template drawing. Um, so we'll go to File, Save As, and it automatically goes to our projects folder, which is nice. We'll go to the 9812.999 folder we created. We'll go to GPK, and we'll just save this file right in GPK. The naming convention for this we need to follow because this is actually going on DMS. It's 9812. It's the UPN, the full 7-digit UPN. So for our fake survey training, it'll be 9812.999. And then this file is called DI map. So DI map. Oh, I turned off caps lock. And then the last 3 digits are just basically you go up in numbers if you have multiple DI maps. So this one will be 001. It's the only one on our fake project. In some situations you'll have two, like RMS and River Project, where there's 2 sites that are several miles away and not going to be connected. We have actually 2 DI maps. So we have a 001 for Black's Ford and a 002 for Warm Springs. That's not going to be common, but it will happen occasionally. So we'll go ahead and save the file. And we got to give it a minute because we're on the VPN. And now we're ready to get going. So the first thing we have to do every time we start one of these is make sure the coordinate system is set up correctly, because the default coordinate system in this drawing is not what we're typically going to use. I'll go back to that survey control file. It shows down here which horizontal coordinate system we're going to use. All of the IFT files have this in there. It also shows the geoid. The geoid's important when you're setting up the files in the data collector. It doesn't matter in OpenRoads, but we need to make sure that our horizontal coordinate system is set to NAD83 2011 like it says here. And right now it is not, because the default is regular NAD83. So where we go to change the coordinate system is we go to Tools menu, and we go down to this Geographic, and select Geographic Coordinate System. And you'll see that we're set to MT83IF, which is regular NAD83 coordinates. So we'll go into the coordinate library here, which is this little book with a globe sitting behind it. And it opens right up to all the Montana ones, which is handy. And the one we want is this MT83 2011 IF. That's NAD83 2011 International Foot. So we're going to pick that. Make sure you don't pick the US foot one. Nothing that we do should ever be surveyed in US survey feed, so we definitely want this International Foot one. And then we'll hit OK. Now that's all ready to go, and we can close out of this geographic coordinate system box. The next thing we need to do is create a field book to put all of our survey data into. And just a quick note on navigation of this thing. What you'll probably see when you open OpenRoads for the first time is this tasks pane over here. And that's the normal way it's set up. We're going to work a lot in this Project Explorer. See this tab I got down at the bottom that says Project Explorer? This survey data we work in a lot, this survey tab. It probably won't automatically be there when you open OpenRoads for the first time. To get that pane to come up, there's this little Project Explorer icon up on the toolbar here. You just got to click on that and it'll open up. See, I can close it like that and reopen it. So we'll go ahead and create a field book. What we need to do that is we need to expand this little default tab here by clicking on this little plus sign. And then there's this field books category. So we'll right click on that and go to new. and it'll automatically name your field book Field Book 1, which is not what we want. So we're going to click on that field book and right click on it and go to Properties. And we can change the name here. So what we're going to do is we're going to name this to our UPN of our project as well. And just hit enter, and that changes the name. You can put multiple field books in a drawing, but I generally don't recommend doing it because in the end when we create our surface, it'll be easier to work with if everything's in the same field book. I can't really think of any good examples of why you would use two different field books, except maybe a situation like East River Road where we had the two separate sites that were fairly close together, but still separate sites that we wanted to keep in two separate surfaces. Once again, that's not going to be a common thing. Most of the time, we're just going to put all of our data into one field book, and it'll make it easier because all the points will be able to be connected to each other and so on, and we'll get one surface instead of two at the end. So our field book is created. We can go ahead and add data to it. There's two places you can click to add data, and only one of them works. Don't click on data files and go to new. Always right click on the field book itself and then go to load and then go to file. The reason is if you click on data files, your chains won't come in correctly. They only work if you click on the field book. I don't know why that is. The first thing we need to import is our control file. So we'll go into control here and we'll change our file type down here to MDT feature OR because that's the one for CSV file extensions. And then we can see our file. So we'll just double click on that and it'll import it for us. And you can see it's just a tiny speck in the corner of the screen. To zoom extents in MicroStation, the easiest way is to just double click your middle mouse wheel. And now we're zoomed in properly to where our points are at. Another thing that'll help out as we go along is we need to change the drawing scale. If this doesn't pop up automatically when you open your MicroStation, which it may not, you just go under Settings and go to Drawing Scale, and that'll pop this window open. 1 to 100 is a pretty good scale for being able to see the points as we're working. 1 to 200 will blow it up even bigger if that's what you want. I'm going to choose 1 to 100. And you'll see there's a problem with our labels, and they go all over the screen when we do that. There used to be a way to fix that, and it doesn't work in the newest version of the software. So instead of fixing the labels, I'm going to hide them. And the way we do that is we go to the Tasks menu down here, and under Survey Processing, there's this double arrow black and white symbol for turn on and off all annotations. And if I click that, all of those labels go away. And it's not that bad to have the labels gone because if you hover over a point, it shows you all the information about it anyways. So I've been using it this way. Hopefully at some point they will fix it so we can actually use the point labels again. But the previous workaround that's listed in the survey processing training book doesn't actually work anymore. Now we still need to do some stuff to these points. The control file doesn't actually bring the points in as control points. It doesn't give them any feature definitions. They just go to this default. So we need to change these to be control points in the file. And the way that we do that is we can go to this survey processing window over here, and we need to open this show details window. And what this survey details window does here is if we go back to our project explorer, we can click on anything in our field book and it'll show us all of the features that are under that category. So like if I click on all point features, it'll show me all my points, which right now is just the control points. If I click on this default, it'll show me all the points that are feature definition default, which of course is the same thing because we only have the control file in here right now. But it's basically a way for us to filter through our points, and we can also manipulate them in a batch, which is what we're going to do right now. So we want to change all of these points to be the trav feature definition, which is our feature code for a control point. So what we can do here is we can click on this first one to highlight it, and we always click over on this little tab next to the point. That's how you highlight them. And then we can shift click down at the bottom, and that'll highlight all of our control points. And we can right click on anywhere on this bar over here and go to edit selected items, and we want to edit the feature definition and change it to trav. And then all you have to do, is hit the check mark, and it updated them all. And you can see it changed from that default symbol to a control point symbol. So all of our control is brought in correctly now, and we have it all showing up as control points. So I'm going to close off survey details for now, and we will continue on by importing our actual survey data. So we'll go back to clicking on our field book in the Project Explorer, and we'll right click and go to load file. And this time we need to go back to our download folder because that's where all of our stuff from the data collector goes. And we'll choose our file type to be this .raw down here, tripod data systems raw. The .job will not work even though we have a .job file. We have to use the raw. And you see our file appears here, so we'll just double click on that. And it'll say it found duplicate point features. That's because the survey control is also in our actual survey file. So we don't want to import those points again. So we'll hit skip for duplicate point features found, and we'll hit apply all, and it'll skip importing all of our control points from that file. And there's our data. And the first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of cleanup. Any points that are coded setup or base can be deleted. Those are just points that the data collector creates when you set up the base somewhere, and we don't need them for this. So I'm going to go back to tasks and open the survey details window again. And then go back to Project Explorer. If I click on Setup, I'll see I have one setup point in here. I can just highlight it and then go right click and delete selected items. So that's gone now. I'll do the same thing with the base points, and I'll delete it. And so those two are cleaned up. Now we can get into actually working on making edits to our survey data. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export this to Google Earth, and I've found this to be really helpful on larger jobs or jobs where the chains have lots of problems. On this one it's not so bad, especially because I was out there when we surveyed, But if you weren't out there for the actual survey work, it is extremely helpful to bring everything into Google Earth so you can actually see what's going on the ground. It'll bring in these lines, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So all we have to do is go to File, and then we go to Export, and then we go to Google Earth. And it'll automatically give it the same name as this file, which is fine, and it'll put it in the GPK folder. So we'll just hit Save. And it'll automatically pop open Google Earth for us. And it'll show us our data overlaid on the Google Earth imagery. It's just a good way to help us see issues. Like we can see obviously that fence doesn't do that. In that case, I mean, we probably could figure that out without looking at Google Earth, but it definitely helps when you're not exactly sure what the site looks like. Another thing I'm noticing right away is we missed shooting this utility pole right here. And we will deal with that later. We will create a point just based on its position in Google Earth. So next we're going to start working on fixing some of the issues with this survey. One thing that jumps out to me right away is that I got an exclamation point here. Those always need to be fixed. And they'll come up on the Message Center tab in Survey Details, and it says Feature Definition G is not found in Feature Definitions. What that means is that I made a typo when I was entering this, and instead of typing in ground, I had just typed in G and shot this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to update this so it says ground instead of just saying G. And we could go through the Survey Details window like we did to get rid of the base and setup files, but with one point only needing to be edited, I think the easiest way is to just click on it and we should be able to get a menu to show up with properties. Oops, there it was. Doesn't want to do it. Well, I'll just click on element information up here. Our point's highlighted, and that's our properties window. It's just another way to open it. And all we need to do is go down here where it says feature definition and it says G. We can change it to ground and hit enter, and our point becomes a ground shot. So that's fixed. The next thing I'm going to fix is our edge of gravel up here. And I can see here that there's an edge of gravel shot over here that doesn't belong. It looks like whoever was shooting this accidentally came over here and shot edge of gravel when they meant to shoot edge or looks like top of slope. This is pretty easy to fix. We just don't need this point. So we can just click on it. And now my context menu is popping up the way I wanted it to earlier. This context menu has a delete point right on the end of it, and we can just go ahead and do that. And it'll fix our chain and make it stay on the other side of the road the way it's supposed to. The next thing we're going to fix is this bottom of slope on the new road. Looking at this point, I don't know why it shot up here, but it's clearly not in the right spot because it crosses over our top of slope. And I think the easiest way to fix this is to just delete the points, as I'm not really sure why it's up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing, just delete the point. And that one's fixed. Now we're going to fix this fence line. The fence doesn't actually jog out like this, it just goes from this point to this point. However, I don't want to delete this point because I'm pretty sure, based on where it is, it's kind of in line with my ground shot grid, that this was intended to be a ground shot. So I want to keep it, but I want to change it from fence to ground, and I want to get the fence chain to stop going through it. There's multiple ways to get a chain to stop going through a point. I'm going to show you how to do it with survey details this time. There's an easier way, and I'll show you that on some of the rest of these chains we have to fix. So if we go into show details again, we want to filter to this fence linear feature, and its name is FN200, as we can see by hovering over it here. So I'll go back to my Project Explorer. Instead of going under all point features like we have been so far, we're going to expand all linear features down here. And this shows the feature codes for all of our lines or chains. And we'll click on fence. And it brings up two fences. This is FN201 on the far side of the road. We want to edit FN200. So we'll highlight it, right click, and we can go to this manage point list. And in this manage point list, we can do a number of things. One of the things we can do is we can delete a point out of the list, and then the chain won't go through it anymore. We can also add points in. So we'll hover over this point to see what point number it is, 400-132. Another way we could figure out which point that is if we highlight these points, it shows that little purple dot next over the top of it. You can kind of find it by trial and error by doing that and looking where the purple dot goes. I think it's quicker to just hover over the point and note the number. So this is the one we want to get out of here. And all we have to do is highlight it and hit delete. And it won't change anything with the chain right away, but you can see if you zoom out, it's showing in purple what the changes are going to result in. After we hit accept, the changes are done, and our point is no longer going through there, or our chain. Now we still need to change this fence point to a ground point because fence points are not included in the surface, and we want this point to be included in the surface. So I showed you how to do it by just going into the properties of the point earlier. We'll go ahead and do it in the survey details this time. So we'll go choose fence points in our Project Explorer over here. And we're 400-132 for our point number. That's this one right here. If we're just editing one point, we can actually just click into these boxes and edit the information right on this screen. So I'll go GRND, hit enter, and that is now a ground shot. So we fixed that. The next thing I want to fix is this top of slope over here. It looks like two things happened here. Well, one thing happened. It resulted in two problems. So this point was supposed to be a part of this chain, but it was shot as a part of this chain. Instead of using survey details, which is kind of a pain as a way to fix these, I'm going to use the context menus associated with the chain. So all we have to do is click on the chain, and we get this context menu of all these different options we can use to edit the chain. And what I want to do for this one is I want to use this little chain with the red X symbol here, which is remove point from linear feature. So all I have to do is click on that, and then I click on the point that I want to remove, which is this one, and it pulls it right out of the chain. Now we need to add this point to this chain over here. So we're going to click on this chain, and the tool we want to use is insert point in linear feature, which is this one over here. So we'll click on that, and then we click on the point. And in this one, it shows us it shows us in blue here what the results of what we're trying to do will be. And the reason it does that is sometimes depending on the geometry of your chain, there might be more than one solution, and you can move your mouse around and change it based on it'll decide which solution to use based on where you move your mouse. But this one, it's in the middle of the chain and it's right next to it, so there's only one solution, and we'll just left click to accept it. We could also right click to reject it if it wasn't doing what we wanted. And we fixed that problem. The next thing I want to fix is this top of bank over here. So what we had here is there's a stream coming into the job site here. And over here, it just kind of overland flows through what's sort of a ditch on this side of the road. Goes through a culvert, and here it's actually a pretty defined stream cut. And we didn't get enough stream bank shots over here to represent the bank where the ditch ends. So the problem we're going to have is when we go to create our surface, we don't want these chains crossing because it'll make really weird looking surface. Since the ditch ends here, I think it's safe to assume that from that end of the ditch, we're sloping down to the bottomest bank of the stream. So to fix this, I'm just going to tell this chain to go through these 3 points on its way to the next top of bank point. And that should represent the ground in this area pretty well. So I'm just going to use that insert point in linear feature tool some more. So we'll go ahead and use it and insert this one and accept. And then we'll do the same thing with this one and accept. And we'll do the same with this one and accept. And now when we make our surface, it should look pretty decent as far as how the slopes tie in at this end. The next thing we have to fix is we have quite a few issues with our top and bottom of bank chains as they cross over this fence here. And I know exactly what happened here. I was standing on one side of the fence and Ryan was standing on the other. And somewhere when we passed the GPS over the fence, we miscommunicated on which chain went on which side of the river, which we can fix pretty easily now that we're in the office looking at this on the screen. What we need to do is break these chains where the issues happen, and then we will recreate them after we fix it on the other side. So the top of bank ones are pretty easy to deal with. They're only crossed over once, I want to say. So all we have to do is highlight one, and what we want to do to break this chain up is there's this tool right here called Break Linear Feature, and we'll click on that and it'll tell us to pick a point feature, and what it's going to do is we'll pick this point and it just broke our chain into 2 different chains at that point. Now our chain on this side is still good, so we want to break it again, and we just want to delete this part in the middle that's incorrect. So we'll click on this section over here and we'll break it again like that. And now we have this chunk that's wrong singled out by itself, and we can just delete it using the delete tool here. And we can do the same thing with the other top of bank chain. We'll use the break chain here, highlight this one, do it again right here, and we'll delete that middle section again. Now we only have one missing segment. We just need to go from this point to this point. And the same thing over here. The software can do that all in one command if we choose this join linear features here. So we'll highlight one of the chains, choose join linear features, and then click on the other one, and joined our chains back together. So now this top of bank is complete and looking the way it's supposed to. We'll do the same with the other one. Now that one's in good shape. Now I'll work on our bottom of banks, which need a little bit more work. So I'm going to highlight this one, and we can see that we have issues starting right here because it's jumping across our flow line, which we obviously don't want. And actually, there's no chain at all on this side of the river from here to here either. So this whole piece right here is bad. We want to get rid of it. So we're just going to break the chain at this point. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll just delete this chunk right here. Now we'll delete the bad part of the other chain, and it looks like it goes from here to here. So we'll highlight this chain, break it at this point, break it again over here, and then delete the bad part in the middle. So with this one on the outside, we once again are only hopping from one point to the next, so we can just use our join linear feature tool. Like that. And that one's fixed. This one, we need to recreate the chain through 1, 2, 3 different points. So we're not going to be able to just use our join linear feature tool, because if we go from there to there, it's just going to draw the line straight across. So what we're going to do first is we'll use this tool right here, which is append point in linear feature. And what this one does that's different than insert point in linear features, this adds it to one of the ends. So we'll pick that, and then we'll pick this point, and it'll show what its result is. It'll try to go the closest end of the chain first. And so that looks good. We'll accept that. We're going to do it again to go this point over here. Accept it. Now we're to the point where we can connect them. Oh, nope, we're not. We have another issue right over here that we're going to have to fix before we do that. This chain here is jumping across our flow line again. So we're going to have to break this little piece out. So we'll do that. And we'll break it again. And we'll just delete this piece that jumps across the flow line. Now we can join this linear feature. All right. So it looks like our bank over here is finished. But we're missing a section from this point to this point on the opposite bank. So we'll just grab that one and do another append point command to lengthen this one down to the end. Like that. So now our top and bottom of banks through here are all fixed. The next thing we're going to work on is that power line. There's two things wrong with it. One thing is that we saw when we were in Google Earth that there's a power pole here that we missed. The other thing is that there's supposed to be a chain for the power line going from, this is a power X shot, which is a overhead power line shot. And it's supposed to go from there to this power pole to this power pole to this one that's missing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out where we want that power pole to go. And instead of sending someone out in the field to go shoot one power pole, which would take several hours, since the location is probably not extremely critical to be exactly where it is, and the elevation of this point doesn't matter because we don't use it in our surfaces, we're just going to scale off of Google Earth using our points and figure out approximately, we'll probably get within a foot of where that power pole is just by looking at Google Earth. So what I'm going to do here is I have this point here and this point here, and that's the base of my power pole is right about here. That's the top and that's the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from each of these points to the power pole, and I'm just going to write down on my paper here what the distance is. So I got this measure tool up here, and I'm going to click at the base of my power pole and measure out to my point. And it's saying it's about 26.3 feet to that point. And to this ground shot over here, it's 32.1. And I'll close out of my measure tool. So now what we can do is we can go back into OpenRoads and we can just draw some construction lines using the regular CAD tools. So we'll go back to the tasks pane over here, and we're going to back out of our civil tools and actually go back to tasks, which is this very top tab here, because that's where our regular CAD drawing tools live. And we're just going to draw two circles, one from this point and one from this point, with the radius being the distance of the power pole from the point. And we'll be able to figure out by where those two circles overlap where that power pole is at. So we're going to draw a circle. I clicked on the circle tool over here, and I'm snapping to the center of that point. So I'll click there. And to make a circle with a set radius, I'll go into this place circle box that showed up here, and we'll check this. This little box lets you define a radius or diameter. We'll change it to radius. And our radius from that point was supposed to be 26.3 feet. So we'll type in 26.3, we'll hit enter, and you'll see that it locked our radius of our circle to 26.3. So then all we have to do is left click in here, and then our circle is created. So now it wants to make another 26.3 foot radius circle wherever I decide to place it. That's not what I want. I want to do a 32.1 foot radius circle. So I'll go back in here, choose 32.1, hit enter. Now I got a 32.1 foot radius circle that I can put on top of this ground shot. And now we got two overlap points. I'm going to close out the circle tool, and I'm going to go back to the element selection tool over here. When you're manipulating points, you pretty much always want to be on that element selection tool, because that's what allows you to get the rollover menus and everything. So we'll go back and look at Google Earth, and this power pole is almost due south of this point here. So we can go back and look, and we know that this overlap point is where that power pole goes, not this one up here. So now we'll go ahead and create a new point. And how we do that is we go back to Project Explorer, and if we go up to All Points features here and right click, we can do New. And it'll bring open this new dialog box for creating a new point. We need to set up a few things in the dialog box. We need to pick the field book that we want the point to be in. There's only one in this job. We need to tell it what the feature definition of this point is. It'll be UT, because that's the power pole feature code. Where it says name, it's actually the point number. I'm just going to hover over this point and see that I was using the 400,000 series. I know I didn't get a 1,000 point shot that day, so I'm just going to go 401000 because I know I haven't used that point number yet. This isn't going to be a control point. Terrain model attribute is something that's important to set properly. I would just choose determine by feature definition. And what that means is our MDT standards already have it called out which points are used in our surface and which ones aren't. For example, a ground shot obviously is used in our surface. A fence shot is not. A utility pole shot is not. There's several things that are not included. A sign shot is not. So if we choose this determined by feature definition, it'll automatically not include our point that for the utility pole in our surface, which is what we want. So now we want to place this point at the intersection, and it's not giving me an intersection snap. No, I don't think it is. I think that's a quadrant on the circle. So this is our snap menu down here at the bottom. And I'm just going to choose intersection. And now it's letting me snap to the intersection of these two circles. And our points, click there. It's going to have us run through these menus again. So we'll left click to accept the point name. We'll left click to accept that it's not a control point. It shouldn't have created it over there. Let me undo that. We'll try it again. Pick our field book again. I'll get the intersection snap going. And I'm just going to click on the intersection every time now, since it seems to want to move my point. And there we go. One problem we still have with this point is that it created at elevation 0, which could create some issues. I'm going to go back to tasks and grab my element selection tool again to get out of this point creation tool. And the first thing we'll do is we'll delete these circles. We don't need these. I'll click on one, hold down control and click the other, and then delete them. And then we'll fix the elevation on this. The elevation isn't critical on this since it's not being used in the surface, but I want it to be close to something that's realistic. So I'm just going to click on this point and go to the properties menu. And this point over here is elevation 4931 basically, so I'm just going to make this 4931 as well. Let's see. 4931. There we go. So now that point's at a realistic elevation instead of 0. Now, the last thing we gotta do with this power line is we need to actually create the power line chain in between these. So, just like we can make a new point, we can also make a new chain. And how we do that is we click on this all linear features here in our Project Explorer. Right click, hit new. And it'll pop open this window for creating our point list. The easiest way to add points is right here there's this little window symbol next to the name. If we click on that, it'll let us pick a point off the screen. So I'm going to start with this one. And when we pick the point, it doesn't populate the name right away. Wait to left click again off the point, and then it brings it in. And we can keep doing that as we move down. So we'll click here, click on the point, click off the point. Do the same thing with this one. And you can see it's building our chain as we go along. And we're good to go, so we'll hit accept. Now you can see here our chain's a white line. That's because when you create these chains, they come in as default. It doesn't give you an option at that point to put in what type of chain it is. So what we need to do is change this to a power X chain. So we'll go back to the task pane, and we need to get back to our survey tools from these CAD drawing tools. They're underneath civil tools here. And then we go to survey, and then we can get back to our show details window and go to Project Explorer. And I already clicked on it, so our default chain comes up here. Let's give it a regular chain name like we would normally see. So I'm going to call this PX01 because it's the only power line I have in this drawing. And I'll have to click back into default after I do that. And now I can change the feature definition to PWRX. And then hit enter. And we have a power line now. This happened when I was working in when I was getting ready for this training too. For some reason our power line symbols are showing up at a really weird scale, and I don't know why that's happening. As a temporary fix, I'm just going to go into the properties of that, and I'm going to change the line type to a regular line. I don't know why it's doing that, and I'm not really sure how to fix it. So bear with me here. It's not wanting to do what I want it to do. Oh, that's because I didn't have the element selection tool chosen. So I'm just going to go in, and instead of having the line style be by level, I'm just going to change it to 0, which is a solid line. And now I won't be having those giant PWR symbols covering my whole drawing. It's not really the way it should be fixed, but for the purposes of getting through this, I'm just going to live with it for now. So the next thing we have to do, as far as I can see right now, all of our chains are in good shape and all of our points are in good shape. So the next thing we need to do is create our surface. And it's really easy to create. All we have to do is go to Project Explorer, and we right click on our field book and go to Create Terrain Model. And it brings it in this weird line type that we don't really like because we can't really see what's going on. So we need to change the style of the surface. If we go to the Civil Model tab under Project Explorer, that's where all the surfaces live. And we'll expand this 9812.999 DI map tab and expand terrain models. And here's our terrain model that we just created. If we right click on this, we can go to the properties and we can change our type. So right now it's a no feature definition, that's why it's triangles. What we want to do is go to MDT terrain display, and the proper display for our existing ground surfaces is this TD existing contours. So I'm going to click on that, and this is what it should look like. Now I see one problem jumping out at me right away, and that is that this is not triangulating from this point to this point. This is actually pretty easy to fix, with one caveat that you shouldn't do this to triangulate across too far of a distance. So the edge method is set to max triangle length of 80 feet. Basically what that means is that if 2 points on the outer edge are more than 80 feet apart, it's not going to connect them, which is what happened here. These are more than 80 feet apart. So I'm going to increase this to 100 feet. It looks like we just missed a ground shot in there, but the area looks pretty flat, and I'm not too concerned about missing that 1 point. So I'm just going to increase my edge length on the outside to 100 feet, and it'll fill that in for us. The one thing I want to say about that is I wouldn't recommend going over 100 feet for that triangulation distance, because if you do, you're going to be triangulating some pretty big areas, and I don't think that that's a very good practice for us. But going up to 100 feet isn't so bad, especially if it's just like one shot like that you're missing, and it's in an area with not a lot of terrain change. Like this, I mean, we got 4 points here without even a foot of elevation change, so I'm not really that worried about it here. So that's fixed. One other really nice feature we can use to find little issues with our chains that we probably missed is, now that we've created a surface, we can do a crossing feature report, and that'll catch little things where our chains are crossing each other, the ones that are used in the surface, and then we'll be able to go back and fix them. It's really good for catching small things that you wouldn't see by just looking around at the drawing. So we'll go ahead and open that up. We go back to the tasks pane over here, and we will choose this terrain model tab. And right next to the R here is this report crossing features tool. So we'll click on that, and it brings up this box to apply an elevation tolerance. I usually set my elevation tolerance to 300ths. Basically what it's saying is if there's two chains crossing each other and they're within 300ths of each other, it's not going to report them, which is fine because that means they're basically at the same elevation and we're not going to have an issue. So I give a little bit of tolerance, so if they are pretty much at the same elevation, I don't have to deal with them. But I wouldn't recommend doing a big tolerance. I wouldn't even go up to 500ths or a tenth, because most of these things we really should just fix. And now it's going to have me select the terrain model that I want to analyze. So I'll select my terrain model. I usually just click on the border, and it'll have us click through to verify our selections from this. And we have a few spots where our chains are crossing. And it gives us quite a bit of information. It tells us what the elevations of the two are and the difference. So like these ones where we're over a foot difference in between our two chains, obviously those need to be fixed. This one probably does too. This .065 we'll take a look at, but it might not be something we need to worry about. So it gives us a really easy way to find the crossing points that we need to fix. If we click on one of these, we can just do zoom to. Highlights one of them in red and one in blue and shows the crossing point. We'll want to zoom out so we can actually see what's going on. And I do see some problems here. And it looks like what happened is both of the ends of these two chains, this top of slope and this bottom of slope, got connected over to these points. And also I think, well, yeah, this top of slope should probably be connected to this point and isn't. And this bottom of slope is the same deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove these ends of these chains from these two, and then we're going to make these two chains go through these 2 points, and that should fix everything here. So we'll select this chain, and we're just going to delete this last segment here. We're looking at the blue one, so it's this segment right here. So I'm going to choose the remove point from linear feature tool and remove this point. And I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to remove this point over here. And that fixed 3 of our issues right there. But I still want to connect these two chains to these 2 points because it looks like they were intended to go through there, and they almost do. So I'll take this one and do a insert point in linear feature and pick that point. And I'll do the same with this one. And you can see that our contours look a lot better. This looks like the end of a ditch now. Basically, our elevation comes up off the end. And that looks a lot more realistic, and there aren't weird jagged contours in there anymore. So that's good. Looks like we have one more to deal with. It's that 0.06 one. We'll see where that one's at. Zoom to. And it looks like our bottom of bank chain crosses over the flow line here, which we don't want. So we'll just delete this segment of this one, and that should fix that. So we'll just remove this last point here from the chain, and that's all fixed. And all of our crossing features are fixed now. So I think we're looking pretty good on this survey project here. I don't think we have anything else to edit. Everything looks pretty much the way it's supposed to. One thing I wanted to mention is right here we're not connected. Normally I would connect those together, but we actually surveyed top of gravel over here because it's not paved yet, and I don't actually want to connect the top of pavement to the top of gravel. I'm going to put a note in this file telling the designers that this is not top of pavement, and then if they want to model top of pavement, they should just raise these chains by 4/10, which I think is the surfacing thickness through there. So I'll leave that up to them. So we're done working in here. We do have to export a couple things. We're still supposed to export our surface as a geopack tin and upload it to DMS as a geopack tin in addition to being in this file. So before I do that, I'm just going to save this because we got everything done that we want done. Geopack does, or OpenRoads MicroStation does save as you go. So even if there's a crash, you really shouldn't lose data, but saving at the end for sure is always good practice. Even if you do just close out, it should save it for you. Exporting the surface as a geopack tin is pretty easy. We'll go back to the Project Explorer and go back to our terrain model underneath Civil Model. All we have to do is right click on it and go to Export Terrain Model as a geopack tin. And it automatically puts it in our output folder, which is where we want it. That's not the name we want though. It's part of it. 9812.999 is our UPN, so that's the correct start of our file naming convention, but these are called DIDTM, and this will be 001.10, and we'll save it. And we can go back to tasks and grab our element selection tool again. And that's all we need to do in the file. One last thing we need to create to upload to DMS is a README file. I'm not actually going to make one for the training, but I'll show you an example of one I did for the original emergency survey of this job. It's called DIRME, and it's a text file. And basically what we put in there is the project number, the project name. The contact should be ideally probably whoever did the microstation work, but you might even put the person who did the field work on there as well if it's different. And basically what we do with this is it's kind of a change log and an explanation of what we did. The first entry will be when you upload your initial file, and you'll put the purpose of the survey, what information's included, and then the rest of this is all notes specific to the project. So one that I might put in this is the fact that this is gravel, top of gravel over here, and that the designers need to raise it by whatever the surfacing thickness is if they want to have a top of asphalt surface over there. That would be a note I'd probably put in there. I don't know if I would really need any other specific notes for this one. I might include a note about how this power pole was approximated location-wise so that if they think they're close to, but potentially not disturbing it, they could have us go out and actually shoot it. But yeah, that's pretty much a README file in a nutshell. And then if you go out and if you either fix something that was still wrong in the survey and then re-upload to DMS, you can put a note in about that. I got a couple in here. If you go out to do a pickup survey, you should add an entry to the README file as well. And then at the bottom, we have this list of files that we uploaded to DMS. And we just list them. We don't have to explain what they are. And I'm not going to show you guys how to upload to DMS because I don't want to upload this to DMS since it's not actually work that I'm trying to send to the designers. But if you guys are uploading stuff to DMS, I can definitely show you how to do that in the future. And that's pretty much it. Do you guys have any questions?
No, but thank you for doing this. This was really helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'm gonna upload this to YouTube. So in the future, I think I'll just make a training video account or something. And that way, if you guys are editing surveys in the future, you can reference back to this. I definitely didn't cover everything you can do. There's more in that book. And there's other tools you can use to edit chains and whatnot, but those are the main ones I use, is what I went over here. Anything else, guys?
Nope. Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, well, sounds good. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, you as well.